All right. Good evening, everyone. This is Cathexis. And once again, I have John, Quantum Eraser, with us. Tonight is Science versus Scientism, Episode 11, Evidences for a Creator. Now, we're going to go ahead and jump right to John's presentation just because I'd rather get into the information before we speak about it on this one. So, how you doing tonight, brother?
Very well, sir. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, we got you screen sharing, so I'm just going to go ahead and put myself on mute, and we'll go ahead and listen to the presentation, sir.
All right, sir. Well, before we get started, I'd like to head back and just clear up some old business with the last presentation on irreducible complexity. You kept asking, was my argument designed for the many arguments against irreducible complexity? And I didn't catch on. You said it a number of times and even came up in a few hangouts. I finally caught it. And my answer to that is no. That irreducible complex argument was solely designed and directed towards Kenneth Miller. He's the professor of cell and molecular biology at Brown University. And purportedly, he debunked irreducible complexity at the Dover trial and subsequently. So that whole presentation was geared towards him and his arguments. The most detailed argument that I ever received from Joe Coffey or Betty Breadmaker was this one. You know, irreducible complexity is debunked, or a reasonable facsimile to that, and you know, professor, and then insert your favorite expletive, B, he is a moron. So basically, that's what it usually started out with, and it usually ended with that. So, as I said, so that may clear up a little bit of confusion. So before we start into this, tonight's presentation, I'm going to go ahead and talk about functional sequence and specified complexity. But before we go there, I'd like to go back to a subject that we talked about in another episode, because this is pretty important. I'd like to carry this through our presentation tonight, and to carry it through in any argument or any position or any dealings you have with people. This is very important because, as I said many times, there are only two possible worldviews or ontological primitives that can be held. That is, the reasons or rationales as to how us and the universe are here. There's only two causes or potential causes. That's unguided, nature or matter, or guided, intelligent agency, or God. That's the only two. Therefore, the atheist or materialist creator must be matter. If you only have two choices and you roll out one, well, you ipso facto follow the other, whether you like it or not. So this is prima facie that there are only two. However, I know better, so I'll go ahead and support it. I'll provide a citation and we'll go through it just like we did in the presentation on this before. So we got George Wald. He's a Nobel laureate in medicine and physiology. As the reasonable view was to believe in spontaneous generation. The only alternative to believe in a single primary act of supernatural creation. There is no third position supporting what I just said. There's only two positions. So let's break it down real quick. You know, premise one, the reasonable view was to believe in spontaneous generation. So that's nature or unguided. The only alternative is what? Primary act of supernatural creation. God guided. That's your only two positions. This is a true dichotomy. There is no third position. I hope that's clear for everyone. I get a lot of people that, you know, they put a lot of things underneath these two. There's a lot of subcategories, I suppose, underneath these two. But when you boil it down, this is all you have left. These two are all you have left. You can subcategory under here. You ain't going to get around it. There's only two choices. So when atheists appeal that they don't have any beliefs or faith, and the definition right here, atheists, they have a lack of belief in the existence of gods. And I got that from Atheists Are Us site right here. So this is certifiable. So they're somewhat confused. Just like I said, if you outright deny one choice out of two choices, then based on the laws of logic, you ipso facto must believe the other. So natural phenomena, that's atheism versus intelligent design. That's it. I hope that's pretty clear. So let's say I didn't transition here. We're gonna start to get into functional sequence complexity. So if you're walking along a deserted beach with a group of friends and family and came across this, nobody around, just you and your friends and family. So would you say out loud, wow, that's awesome. I can't wait to come back tomorrow and see what the wind, waves, erosion, and laws of motion will make next? I mean, would anyone say that? Would any rational person say that? I surely hope none of those family members or friends are in the mental health or law enforcement professions, because this is soon going to happen to you if you say that, right? We all know that. So how do we come to the conclusion that an intelligent agent or agents built the structure? We didn't observe anyone building it, right? How could we reach that conclusion? Well, it's called functional sequence or specified complexity. The difference between this and this. See the difference there, folks? And this. There's a big difference, right? This is functional sequence specified complexity just of a single simple living cell. Dwarfs by exponential magnitudes that of this sandcastle. Dwarfs it. A single living cell contains hundreds to thousands of hyper nanotech protein robots. From Craig Venter, the Grand Poobah geneticist. Over the next 60 minutes, I explained how life ultimately consists of DNA-driven biological machines. All living cells run on DNA software, which directs what? Hundreds to thousands of protein robots. Where do robots come from? It's a question you have to ask yourself. So, my favorite. This has a lot of memories for me. It's a hyper nanoscale FedEx. The amazing Kinnison. Ladies and gentlemen, this thing walks. They're in your cells. And why it's so special to me is when my daughter was 8 years old, I brought her in here and we had a little discussion about Kinnison. And I showed her a picture of this, and then we watched a couple videos of what it does. And you know, ever since that point, I never had to explain to her the rationale behind a Bible study. From an 8-year-old kid, she immediately knew. That speaks volumes, but this is special, like I said. So, 70, it's 70 billionths of a meter, or 3 millionths of an inch long. This guy. It's got 2 arms and 2 legs and an upright body. The arms are right here, legs are here, and an upright body. Kinnison's motor is about 50% efficient, twice as efficient as a gasoline engine. It produces nearly 15 times more power than any man-made engine. This thing's capable of 100 steps per second. That would equal a person walking 600 meters per second or 1,300 miles an hour. Scale it up to our own dimensions, a motor with corresponding properties would travel at similar speeds and produce as much horsepower per unit weight as the jet engines of a thrust supersonic car. This thing's amazing. And by the way, you see that package it's carrying? That thing's date and time stamped. He's already got the location. You think stupid atoms can do that? To say no God, you must conclude that natural phenomena, wind, waves, erosions, and laws of motion, constructed robots. That's your position. Can't get around it. All right, let's get specific here. Functional sequence specified complexity continued. There are three types of complexity. Number one, random sequence complexity, ordered sequence complexity, and functional sequence specified complexity. We call it FSC. Random, it's just like how it sounds. You throw them up against a dartboard and that's what you get. So this is a good example of random. Ordered, on the other hand, and you can see how ordered this is. This would be crystals, snowflakes, sand dunes, fractals, or Shannon information. This is a misnomer, by the way, because the information from Shannon has no meaning, and information without meaning is like hydrogen or water without hydrogen. But anyway, like I said, you got random sequence ordered complexity, ordered sequence complexity, and this is functional sequence specified complexity. These are examples. It puts the lotion in the basket, sandcastles, the genetic code, barbecue grills, Indy cars, hyper nanotech machines and robots, like I just showed with kinesin, ATP synthase, flagellum, cilia, and thousands of others. So random sequence complexity and ordered sequence complexity, that equals a nature construct, or like I said before, Shannon information. FSC, on the other hand, is an intelligent design construct. From Leslie Orgel, he was the grand poobah of origins of life research. He wrote this in 1973. In brief, living organisms are distinguished by their specified complexity. Crystals are usually taken as the prototypes of simple, well-specified structures because they consist of a very large number of identical molecules packed together in a uniform way. Lumps of granite or random mixtures of polymers are examples of structures that are complex but not specified. Crystals fail to qualify as living because they lack complexity. The mixtures of polymers fail to qualify because they lack specificity. From H.P. Yockey, the king of information theory, the attempts to relate the idea of order, remember we just talked about that before, ordered sequence complexity, with biological organization or functional sequence complexity or specificity, must be regarded as a play on words that cannot stand careful scrutiny. It's much less than that. Informational macromolecules can code genetic messages and therefore can carry information because the sequence of the bases and the residues is affected very little, if at all, by self-organizing physicochemical factors. In other words, what Professor Yockey is saying is that if you walk by a magnetic board and no one's around, and you see the message, "Hey Joe, can you please clean up and ensure all the tools are put away? Gone fishing, see you when I get back," that the force between the letters and the board are not responsible for the construction and the sequence of the letters and the message thereof. I mean, that's ridiculous absurdity. According to an atheistic worldview or a materialist worldview, they must believe that the force is responsible. From Ilya Prigogine, famous Nobel Prize winner, king of the laws of thermodynamics, especially the second law. See what he has to say. The point is that in a non-isolated open system, there exists a possibility for the formation of ordered, low entropy structures at sufficiently low temperatures. This ordering principle is responsible for the appearance of ordered structures such as crystals, as well as for the phenomenon of phase transitions. Phase transitions are water, like ice, water vapor, and liquid water. Those are the phase transitions of water. Unfortunately, this principle cannot explain the formation of what? Biological structures, because it's functional. Biological structures are functionally sequenced in specified complexity. That's why. So a couple more examples of functional sequence specified complexity. Cholecystokinin is a peptide hormone or functional protein produced in the mucosal epithelium of the small intestine and stimulates release of digestive enzymes from the pancreas that are vital for digestion and absorption. Without it, you die. Albumin, another functional protein, is only produced by the liver. It consists of a single polypeptide chain of 580 amino acids. Of its many functions, its main function is to maintain intravascular oncotic or colloidal osmotic pressure. It's vital to homeostasis. Without it, you die. They are each functionally specific, sequentially complex. You cannot interchange them. They are specifically designed for their specific roles and their specific functions, period. Really, we can distill this all down, and I like to use this example. You're shipwrecked on a desert island, and you're walking on the beach, and you observe this written in the sand. Excuse me. Don't tread to the north side of the island. There's headhunters. I found fresh fruit and water on the south side. That's where I'm at. See, that's functional sequence specified complexity. You then conclude, since you haven't seen anyone on the island, that the wind, waves, erosion, and the laws of motion must have constructed, arranged the letters and the message thereof. You then head north. That's the position that we're at here, folks. I'm sure that most of the people in the or watching this video are not going to head north. But you never know. Okay.
Yeah, I think it needs to be distilled down to those two, because it's something that's quite ignored. People don't even know what they believe, is what I've found in this whole. People who even try to talk on these subjects, they don't even know what they believe.
Yeah,
yet
that's
they're materialists.
That's a really important point, Cathexis. And I couldn't agree with you more. They don't know what they believe in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I really don't understand it. I don't. It's like nothing has gone under the scrutiny microscope or telescope.
Yeah.
Or spotlight. So, and that's a big problem. You need to look at what the contingent necessary facts are of the things that lead you to hold positions that you have. That's I don't think I can say it better than that.
Yep.
All right, so like I've heard this statement, for the past 10, 12 years. And I've been hearing it a lot lately, and that's why I wanted to devote a block of instruction to this. That all I hear now is there is no evidence whatsoever of a creator. I know I'm not the only one. I don't know if any of you guys out there have been saying it, but I know you've heard it. So I don't know. They must not have gotten the memo, because I've been posting these on science forums, multitudes, for years. So I don't know. They must not have gotten the memo. Maybe they just skipped this part. So let me go through a few of them. I got 4. So, number 1, scientific law. This is my law. So don't ask me for support or citation. I'm the support and the citation. Information code software is only ever caused by intelligent agency, without exception, folks. That is, whenever we find information existing and trace it back to its source, it invariably leads to an intelligent agent every single time. The null hypothesis in support. Nature, natural phenomena, causation cannot create algorithmic, cybernetic coding and decoding schemes. That's information. We're talking about DNA transcription and translation. If you cry foul and claim there's no information or code in the genetic code, well, you're screwed. From Hood in Nature in 2003, the title sets it apart right there. We can stop right here. Digital coded DNA. Over. But we won't. DNA has two types of digital information. The genes that encode proteins, which are the molecular machines of life. We just got done talking about one, kinesin, and the gene regulatory networks that specify the behavior of the genes. Number two, we got H.P. Yawkey again, the king of information theory. He's talking about the genetic code. He's talking about by the same principles found in both genetic information systems and in modern communication and computer codes. Listen, he's given the benefit of the doubt here to this one, not this one. This information system dwarfs this one. It's not even a comparison into functional sequence specified complexity. I can remember Bill Gates saying one time, he started laughing when the comparison was made between genetic informations and modern communication codes. He was laughing at this one, not this one, in comparison. You're talking Humpty Dumpty versus War and Peace. War and Peace right here, Humpty Dumpty right here. He ain't joking. Then you got Richard Dawkins even telling you. So I don't know, they're saying people are telling them, you know, some species unjustly called primitive amoebas have as much information in their DNA as 1,000 Encyclopedia Britannicas. It's over. You know, if you need me to support this anymore, I got about 1.8 million of them. We can go through them. So, the null hypothesis again. Nature, natural phenomena, causation cannot create algorithmic, cybernetic coding and decoding schemes. Your position, if you're on the opposite position, you have the alternative hypothesis. Nature or natural phenomena causation can create algorithmic, cybernetic coding and decoding schemes. So go ahead. We'll be waiting. This is what you're going to have to do. You're going to basically have to show ink, paper, and glue molecules authoring technical instruction manuals and blueprints. So best wishes. If you can't falsify the null, which nobody on this planet can or will ever do, then you hear that sound? That's your worldview circling the drain at light speed. And as we already went over, that's the average two-way speed. Just in case you're wondering, to do a hypothesis test, you will actually have two hypotheses, the null and the alternative, which are stated in such a way that they are mutually exclusive. That is, you can't have both hypotheses be true. The null hypothesis is the conclusion that is considered the default. You will accept this hypothesis if you fail to find sufficient support for the alternative hypothesis. So, breaking this down. So we're accepting the default, this hypothesis, the null. Nature, natural phenomena, causation cannot create algorithmic, cybernetic coding and decoding schemes until you show us support for this hypothesis, the alternative hypothesis. Nature or natural phenomena, causation can create algorithmic, cybernetic coding and decoding schemes. Follow? Go on now. Oh, by the way. So the null hypothesis is the zero difference or no difference hypothesis. It predicts that changing one variable, the independent variable, will have no effect on the variable being measured, the dependent variable, where we've heard that before. So the ultimate goal of every scientific inquiry is to reject or falsify the null hypothesis. If you're unsure about that, call your 5th grade science teacher. So if you don't have a viable independent variable, how in the world can you even formulate the null hypothesis, let alone reject it, por favor? Sorry about that. I got a little fired up. So basically, what you have to show is, after formation of the functionally sequentially specific complex motifs, DNA, RNA, or functional proteins naturally, from their respective building blocks, which is physically and chemically impossible outside living cells or organisms, then that's just the physical chemical molecule. We're not even at the information yet. Then, to remain logically consistent with the materialist, methodological, naturalist, atheist position, you must conclude, when viewing DNA, the genetic code, and its attributes, that stupid atoms and molecules somewhere in Shangri-La not only created the code, but then conducted a meeting between DNA and, not exhaustive, messenger RNA, the IFs, EFs, and RFs, both subunits of the ribosome, all the tRNAs and the amino acyl tRNA synthetases, which then hammered out the convention, the meaning in the software, and processes, 1/1000th of which would make Einstein blush, and any conflicts to make sure everybody was on the same page, so it and they could survive. Because no functional proteiny, no lifey. Of course, everyone attending the meeting, save for DNA, messenger RNA, and transfer RNA, are already, in whole or in part, functional proteins. Huh. That begs the question, where'd the first functional proteins, which are coded for on DNA and takes the entire process above to make, in the first place, come from? Where did they come from? That's a minor detail, right? Then they closed the meeting and went for cocktails. Then at the bar, they discussed how they were going to handle water. That's 75% of all cells, especially the problematic ester bond between the amino acid and that of the amino acyl tRNA synthetases just forged with transfer RNA, and proofread that has a half-life of 0.5 seconds in water, where this particular process is all taking place, and then the RF that with one itty-bitty molecule of water in the A site within the ribosome causes the entire complex to break apart and stop translation. See above, no functional proteiny, no lifey. And where'd you get the ribosomes from? Arguably the most functionally specified complex two-part machine in the biosphere, which is, guess what? A ribonucleoprotein complex. It's a football bat without the 49 functional protein motifs in the large subunit, and 33 of them, of the motifs in the 40s, or the small subunit. Where'd you get them? Then, since there's no free lunch, and since the delta G for protein synthesis is positive, for all you second law of thermodynamics fans out there, had to bring GTP and ATP into the mix, along with all the sub-processes that make them, coded on DNA, because without the specific energy source, type, currency, and placement and timing, would be like watching the space shuttle launch after they sprayed the outside with diesel. And by the way, this delta G, that's not a disco band from the 70s, just in case you were wondering. Wiki that. I'm just spitballing here, but I think you may need a new Just So story. Oh, and by the way, you see those intrinsic factors, elongation factors, and release factors? They are functional proteins. Where'd they come from? They are absolutely necessary to begin, for the regulation through, and to end the entire functional protein manufacturing process we just spoke about in detail above. Is this like the space shuttle building the space shuttle assembly plant scenario? And yes, it gets better. Let's say I remove one of the intrinsic factors, or the initiation factors, or the elongation factors from the milieu. What happens to DNA translation in total? That's right, it's a football bat. It's a pillow hammer. You get zero translation, no functional protein synthesis. And guess what that means besides vapor lock? The entire process, DNA transcription and translation, is what? Irreducibly complex. Elvis just left the building on that one. All right, the laws of thermodynamics, my number 2 proof. The first law of thermodynamics. This is what it said. The total amount of mass or energy in the universe is constant. That is, nature or natural law cannot create or destroy matter or energy. The second law of thermodynamics. The amount of energy available for work is running out. The universe is moving inexorably to maximum entropy, or what they call a heat death. Now, if the total amount of mass energy is constant and the amount of usable energy is decreasing, then the universe will end. The heat death of the universe, like I said above. Ergo, it had a beginning or a creation, and not the Big Bang pseudoscience train wreck. From Alexander Vilenkin, it is said that an argument is what convinces reasonable men, and a proof is what it takes to convince even an unreasonable man. With the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. There's no escape because it's a second law of thermodynamics violation. That's why. From Paul Davies, astrophysicist, the universe can't have existed forever. We know there must have been an absolute beginning a finite time ago. See the second law of thermodynamics. Since the first law states that nature or natural law cannot create or destroy matter or energy, and since the universe had a beginning, and since there are only 2 choices, nature versus intelligent design, as established previously, for the how of that beginning, therefore what? A creator. Too easy. Here's the syllogism for information for my first point. Code contains information, such as a book, Morse code, DNA, instructions. Information is only created by authors. DNA is a code, therefore DNA has an author, a creator. This is irrefutable. And the last one, quantum mechanics. This is over. According to Niels Bohr, Werner Heisenberg, Max Born, described by Erwin Schrödinger, then validated repeatedly via thousands of experiments without exception for the past 100 years, with the most successful branch of physics in the history of actual science, quantum mechanics, independent of the knowledge of the which path information, or of it existing, particles, that's photons, all elementary particles, atoms, molecules, have no defined properties or location. They exist in a state of a wave function, which is a series of potentialities rather than actual objects. That is, matter doesn't exist as a wave of energy prior to observation, but as a wave of potentialities. Wave functions aren't waves, classical peak troughs. They are potentialities. That is, probabilities. They have no mass energy. You can't give me a wavelength and a frequency of a wave function. To put it another way, the wave of a wave function is not a wave in physical space. It's merely an abstract mathematical construct. We went over that in past presentations. So matter, our reality, doesn't exist without, first, a knower or the existence of the Witch path information. Every double slit experiment, every delayed choice experiment, every quantum eraser experiment, every experiment that combines any of 1, 2, or 3 show exactly the same results. If the Witch path information is known or can be known, no interference. That means matter existing. Conversely, if the Witch path information is not known and can't ever be known, there is interference. That equals no matter existing yet. And we already went over this example in my quantum mechanics presentation. So, scientific method, observe a phenomenon. Photons, elementary particles, atoms, molecules exhibit both wave-like and particle behavior. The hypothesis, if the Witch path information is known or can be known, then we will observe no interference. Wave function collapse. That's matter existing. Conversely, if the Witch path information is not known and never can be known, then we will observe interference. That's the wave function intact, or no matter. Experiment. Which one of the thousands without exceptions would you like? If you're unsure of this, just go back to my quantum mechanics presentation. I went through the second experiment in my list here. The first experiment from the Proceeding of National Academy of Sciences in 2013, Zhao Sung Ma, the quantum erasure with causally disconnected choice. He said, the presence of path information anywhere in the universe is sufficient to prohibit any possibility of interference. It is irrelevant whether a future observer might decide to acquire it. The mere possibility is enough. Therefore, the lack of Witch path information anywhere in the universe is sufficient enough to prohibit any possibility of wave function collapse. That's the formation of matter. Second experiment, like I said, you can go back and review the quantum mechanics presentation. We're not going to go through this because I went through it in detail. We'll just go through the experimental results. This concludes that the knowledge and knowing of the Witch path information alone causes wave function collapse. Decoherence, physical interaction with the measuring devices, does not cause wave function collapse. QM phenomena transcend time and space. That is, space-time has utterly no meaning in quantum mechanics. In conclusion, back to the original question, no evidences, huh? We have scientific evidence from genetics, biochemistry, quantum mechanics, and information theory. A logical proof directly, see the syllogism with codes, and a logical consistency in accordance with the laws of thermodynamics. I don't know, that doesn't sound like no proof to me. So the incoherent claims of there's no evidence for a creator appear to be the result of the covering of the eyes, the sticking fingers in the ears, and saying la 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 over and over again. I don't even need to say anything here, do I? I will anyway. Werner Heisenberg, pioneer of quantum mechanics, known for the uncertainty principle. The first gulp of the glass of natural science will turn you into an atheist. But then at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you. He knew it. All those guys knew it back in the day. Why don't we know it now?
They didn't finish their drink. All these pretenders out there.
they not only finished the drink, they haven't acquired the glass yet.
Most of them, yeah, I would say. But you do
Have a nice
find
day.
so many with the atheism problem, and it's because they didn't finish the drink. They're still not digging far enough.
P.S. Sorry about that. So I put a couple of questions in here because these subjects being brought up, they're left to take stabs in the dark, and this is one of those dark stabs because they heard this before, probably from the God delusion. Who created the creator? Who created the creator's creator's creator? That sort of deal. You know what this is? Guess what this is called? It's a fallacy. Which one? It's an infinite regress fallacy. They post it like a conundrum or something. I'm shaking my head. He is the creator. The creator can't be created, or else he couldn't be the creator by simple definition. Furthermore, logically, for finite things to exist, that's the universe and us, there must be an eternal, always was source. It's a contingent necessity, antecedent fact. See Aristotle, prime mover, unmoved mover, the first cause. To deny this, you are forced into a logical checkmate, then reduced to introducing a what? Infinite regress fallacy. It's fallacious. That's what that is. Nothing can create itself, because that would mean it pre-existed prior to its existence. That's logical seppuku. Also, there can only be one creator. Considering more than one, even for a Planck time, is again logical seppuku. And I like this one. As for the materialist or realist or atheist, they believe that the universe created them, right? Okay, no problem. Who created their creator? The universe. I like to turn it on them. That's a good question right there.
All this.
So who was the,
Oh, sorry, go on, John. No, I was going to say with the whole Big Bang thing, Lawrence Krauss is on record saying, of course matter can create itself. All you need to do is add a little bit of gravity, and that's it.
Let me tell you something. The laws of physics have never caused anything in the history of the human race. The laws of motion never caused a single billiard ball to roll across a table. All right?
Yeah.
So let me make this simple for you guys. So once you reach, we already established there must be a creator. So the next logical follow-on question is what? Who is it? Here's a systematic method that I'm giving to you. This is what I used back in the day. This is exactly what I did. Since you know from the laws of thermodynamics and quantum mechanics that whoever it is, the creator must be outside of what we call the universe. So make a list of every single purported deity and their respective claims on how they or the universe came to be. Next, you cross off the ones that are a product of the universe or claim that the universe has existed forever, because they're pretenders. Why? Well, the universe can have existed forever. We know there must be an absolute beginning a finite time ago. Then, after that, how many are left? How many are left, folks? Thanks for your ear. Have a nice day.
Excellent presentation. I really appreciate that one for sure. This is what we've been leading up to. I mean, a lot of people, it's really interesting to see such the opposition in society to the notion of this being a creation of some kind. And it's like you went over in the first presentation, this is the dogma of materialism. They think that literally matter created itself. It's the only logical thing, well, quote unquote logical, that they can really assert.
Yeah,
back to the sandcastle.
Yeah, I like to use this with people because it really brings it home. Everyone's done this. They walked on the beach, seen it. You don't even think twice, right?
Yeah, yeah.
If you, I had a lot of people go to Mount Rushmore. I mean, did they think twice when they're looking at Mount Rushmore that maybe the wind, waves, and erosion and laws of motion, you know, sculpted the faces on Mount Rushmore?
And while you were doing the presentation, I decided to look up how an atheist deals with DNA, sentience, complex language, and all this. And this is the answer, the top answer on Quora. It says DNA/RNA is suspected of having formed
Spontaneously.
spontaneously, excuse me, from the elements available. We don't know that such happened, but it is more plausible than an omnipresent magician who waved his magic hand.
No, it's impossible because the delta G for synthesis of DNA, RNA, and functional proteins is positive. That's from their building blocks. And you got even more problems after that, or bigger issues. So I'll tell you what you do with them, you say, okay, no problem. Go find me the study or the experiment that starts out with ribose, nucleobases, and phosphates, and let's see it wicker itself together. That's what you do. Good luck.
And I think what the larger problem is what the damage religion has done over the years. Not just materialism. I'll talk about the main religions, Catholicism,
Sure.
which we know is pagan, and all of the
Sure.
other religions who anthropomorphize this notion of the creator. So, most of the atheists today, these are usually kids in their mid-20s who had the first gulp of science, rebelling against the fact that their parents made them go to church when they were 12 years old.
No,
And
the first gulp of pseudoscience.
yeah, but the point though is that they are. I think religion has done such a damage though, because when I was an atheist, I realized it's not that I was rebelling against that this place being a creation or that there being a creator. It was more of I was rebelling against what religion had done to humanity. What, looking back at the Crusades, looking back at, the Inquisition, looking back at all of the horrible things that people who in the name of religion had done. And I find that most atheists use that as their argument, or they'll bring up
Oh, I see.
the God of the Old Testament, and they'll try to make all these quibbling arguments about. But what I think the mistake is there is that it's that man-made idea of what the creator is that's been handed to us through tradition that they're rebelling against. I think for the most part, that's what it is. That's what it was for me. I was just diametrically opposed to what religion was saying was the truth of the matter. It became something I dismissed outright. But when you do that, you have to put on such a big pair of blinders, because everything that we've gone over in these presentations, this is objective fact. This is something that I had to ignore when I was going down this path. When the flagellum came up, I literally was like, "Oh, I'll think about that later." Like I really avoided it, and I think that's what happens. You have to put on a pair of blinders in order to carry this belief system. And that's what it is. That's what I think it's funny about atheism is it's a belief system that has made them believe they don't have a belief system.
Yeah, yeah.
So
the biggest the biggest problem too is just like you said that it's an equivocation fallacy, because remember I said many times, Christianity is not a religion. Catholicism, that's a religion.
yes,
The everything done under the name of Catholicism, that's religion. So there's a simple equivocation fallacy going on. And as soon as you say religion, what do most people think of immediately?
well,
Christian,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
No, that's incorrect. That's where they head off the rails.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to make the distinction of the difference between a worldview and a religion. Religion relates to dogma. And what is just hilarious is that modern day rational materialists, it's a belief system, it's a dogma. They have to ignore so much or make all these mental gymnastics.
That's what it is.
It is. It's just a bunch of mental gymnastics. And just quickly, friend of mine, an atheist friend out in the chat right now, we went over the flagellum last week. You probably should watch that because John here goes over the arguments against the arguments that so you should take a look at that. It's pretty good. But anyways, yeah, that's what I've realized through this entire process. I've learned so much doing these presentations with you, and this has been able to really cement the ideas. Before I was making positive changes in my life in the context that I gave way to the possibility that this was a creation and I've been created. But now, when you go through this information as thoroughly as you have, I don't know how somebody could walk away from these presentations and still be a dogmatic materialist afterwards. It makes zero sense to me.
They're whistling past the graveyard, man.
Yeah. So I'm hyper grateful that I've been able to do these presentations with you, and we definitely. What do you think? We got about 3 or 4 more.
I don't know. The way things are going, we might have 20 more. I don't know. It just depends on what happens next week. Yeah,
well,
I'm looking probably anywhere between 2 and 5 more of these. But we're going to go back over different stuff next week. I'm going to go over what we went over in the recap. We did a recap episode, and I asked, or I put forward a minor question, and I haven't heard anything from it. No one's commented, and we're going to go over that. So that'll be on scientific laws, and then we're going to talk about not time, but how, I don't even know how to word this. How in the world can anyone validate how old something is? We're gonna go over that, and that's gonna set us up for the next week. And I'm gonna hold off on talking about that for right now, but just stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Yeah, we've got some good stuff coming up. I'm also halfway through my philosophical presentation concerning these ideas, and then I have a presentation on the history and origin of heliocentricity, philosophical implications of that system versus geocentric, Ptolemy's prior system, and so I'm looking forward to going over that. We'll do that pretty much at the end. I'll have some presentations hopefully ready to go in the next 3-4 weeks. So it's looking good. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add today?
No, I think that'll be just about it.
Yeah, you did a great job covering all that. I want to thank everybody out watching. We've had some really great support. Go ahead and thumbs it up if you liked it, and I really appreciate you guys coming out and taking the time to listen. Hopefully we can have some effect on some of those dogmatic materialists. That religion's a hard one to crack, John. These guys are very dogmatic.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how they can stand up against. We're talking science. I mean, actual science and logic.
Yeah.
You can't hide from the truth.
I agree.
Whether the truth's published or not, it's still the truth.
Well, they could try, and they could avoid the show, or they could try to dismiss it by slagging off, who's given the presentation or me. And that's really the only thing they have. I haven't seen somebody make a cogent argument against any of the facts that you have presented in any of these.
You won't see any. I haven't got cogent arguments for greater than 10 years now. So don't be surprised when you're not going to get any.
It's those lovely dogmatic materialist pseudoscience lovers. Hopefully they'll see the light soon enough. But thank you, everybody. Once again, thank you, John. Everybody have a great evening.